It's a joint cabinet meeting north of Berlin in a castle that was supposed to finally put Eurozone reforms on the rails. Guess what, though? The migrant crisis, again, stealing the show. Angela Merkel and her cabinet hosting Emmanuel Macron's team as she fends off fresh challenges from Donald Trump and her own interior minister. And by the way, staring down angry tweets from the White House is the easy part for the German leader. Merkel's domestic challenger, Horst Seehofer, has now given her until after next week's EU summit, or else he wants to shut the borders, a move cheered on by Italy's new populist government and Seehofer's own Bavarian CSU constituency ahead of October regional elections. The rest of Merkel's ruling coalition squarely backs her on this one. For if the EU's largest member closes its borders, it's the end of Europe as we know it. Where does it all leave Macron's lofty call for more Europe? On that score, the French president wants Germany to share more of the burden on bolstering the euro. He's gotten part of his wish, it seems, from the pledge made by Merkel earlier. And Germany wants France to share more of the burden when it comes to migrants. Can they strike a bargain that's actually substantive and sell it to their respective constituents? Today, in the France 24 debate, 10 days to save the Chancellor? And we're joined from Frankfurt by columnist Roland Tichy, editor-in-chief of Tichy's Einblick. Thank you for being with us in the France 24 debate.
Hello to Paris. From
London, Leopold Tragot, policy analyst at the think tank Open Europe. Welcome to the show.
Hello.
And we want to welcome Alexis Poulain, co-founder of Le Monde Moderne, the digital news website, The Modern World. How are you, sir?
Good, thank you.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and Twitter, hashtag F24debate. No major announcements from Meserberg Castle. Instead, a firm backing for European solutions to harmonizing migration policy.
We want better protection for European borders, and we support the proposals of the European Commission, particularly in significantly augmenting the resources of the Frontex agency, up to 10,000 men, and deploying these support resources to the countries that manage the outer borders of Europe, thus progressively creating a real European border police.
Anyone can request asylum in Europe, but we must coordinate the standards by which we grant asylum. And one must be able to arrive in any Schengen country without being able to choose one country to the detriment of another. The most heavily impacted countries must have our support, and we want solidarity between member states.
Before we go into the nuts and bolts of it, Alexis, let's just explain for our viewers here about the political theater that we witnessed today. It's ahead of an EU summit, so the French and the Germans want to align their positions without seeming too much to be, laying down the law for the rest of the of the European Union.
They are meeting Jean-Claude Juncker later tonight. So really, it's the preparation of what will be a very tense summit at the end of the month, because the migration crisis is just building up, and this is the final stage before the EU election. They have to deliver now, because it's fine to say that Frontex will get more people in the coming 5 years, but now we have an issue, and a big one, is that Europe is divided on the issue, with the new Italian government and Salvini saying that this is stop to the former policy, Austria, and no, in Germany there is a big fight going on between CSU and CDU, and Seehofer, the interior minister from Germany, saying, I want to align with Salvini, I don't want to align with Brussels anymore. So that's the big question, and the next summit will be, how can you, most of the time Europeans are not agreeing, but this time it's going to be a fight, not just chit-chat about migration. It's going to be a big fight about the future of the migration policy.
Well, luckily, Leopold Tragot has been reading the tea leaves after that press conference we saw in Berlin. From that, what can you glean as to how the fault lines will be set up at that EU summit next week?
Well, I think that Germany and France are gradually coming closer together on what they want to achieve, at least on Eurozone reform. We still haven't reached or seen the final agreement of what they really want in detail. We see that the Eurozone budget will come, for example, but we don't yet know exactly how it's going to look and what it's going to do. But it seems as if, we're closely getting there. And the next challenge will obviously be to get this Franco-German agreement past the other 25 member states and try to get them on board
concretely,
as well.
what can we expect in what they're going to try to sell to the other members when it comes to migration policy?
Well, I think there's increasingly consensus that on the one hand, Frontex will be beefed up, at least to 10,000 staff, possibly even more, and member states are willing to pay for this. And as well, we see increasing talk also by Tusk today for setting up reception centers outside the EU borders, possibly in Northern Africa, possibly in Albania, and basically have asylum seekers lodge their claims there rather than first coming into the EU and doing it on European territory.
We're pleased to be joined at this point from Brussels by Elmar Brok, member of the European Parliament, who hails from Angela Merkel's CDU party. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate. What are your expectations? What could viewers expect from that summit when it comes to migration policy? What's going to be the outcome?
I hope that this message was sent out from the meeting between Angela Merkel and President Macron would be also the outcome of the summit. If we really agree and commit ourselves that we have a strong border control, if we have a situation that we do more against the root causes, that we keep the Turkey deal, which made it possible that we have now 90% less migrants over the Mediterranean, including the Africa policy, then I think we are on a good track. This, I think, is a decisive point to lower the figures, not the question who is taking whom and how can he control its internal borders. This, I think, is the main important questions, and I think that here we have further progress.
Roland Tichy, you agree?
Well, I do not agree in that. I think there's nothing against a better protection of external borders. The only question is why didn't they do it during the last 3 years? How will it come? When will it come, the protection of European borders? And as long as the external borders are not controlled, there are many voters in Germany who want the German borders to be controlled, or at least controlled as safe as the French-Italian borders are. It is not, as you said before, the end of Europe as we know it. Nobody will destroy Europe, I guess, as far as I can see, from my perspective as journalist. But many voters want that asylum seekers cannot tour throughout Europe to go to the place they like and where they get the most benefits, but they should stay in the place where they first asked for asylum. This is the only thing which is on demand at the moment in the internal discussion of Germany. So it's not that a big question. It's more a question within the German government. I think Angela Merkel has lost great parts of control over her coalition, and so what we see at the moment is a kind of an internal German policy crisis.
All right, we're going to get back to that internal German policy crisis because, of course, it's key to this discussion. But first, Alexis Poulain, this issue of where you register when you get to Europe, it seems like there are irreconcilable differences on this.
It's the Dublin Agreement. Yeah, it's the country where you come in is actually where you have to deal with all the paperwork and come back whenever you can't go to another country.
Which the Italians say is unfair.
Of course, it's unfair because if you look at the countries that get the most pressure for this, it's Spain, Italy, and you have also the border on the east with Hungary and Germany to some extent. So it's a big question that's been on the table for years, and we've been outsourcing it to Turkey, for example, because back in 2016, it was about 1 million people trying to reach Europe, and then we said, okay, you close the border with Turkey, and then we got a deal on the Mediterranean. So we give money to Turkey. I know we're talking about giving money and having disembarkment platform in Tunisia and Albania. Again, outsourcing, giving money to other countries than European countries or close to Europe, saying, deal with it, we don't want to deal with it. At one point, European countries will have to deal with it. Not only with manning the borders, with Frontex, but with having the people coming to your countries. And right now, the deal was put by the Commission, and the EU Commission tried what she could, saying we have quotas, you try to get this amount of people because of the population you have. Nobody played the game. France didn't play the game. That's why Italy is there now. And it was the same with all the European partners, Orban being the leader of this. So if they don't get to a truly European deal on the both sides of the Mediterranean by the end of the month, this problem will just be the end of Europe.
Will be the end of Europe.
Well, as we know it, for sure, because we can't just stay as being with 28 countries, but we never agree. And this subject is one of the biggest subjects on the agenda for European people, with the Eurobarometer saying it's the number one issue for.
Elmar Brok?
I think, first of all, we have to see that this money is not given to Turkey or Tunisia, that is given to humanitarian organizations. This is used for feeding people, to housing people, give medicine to the people. Turkey does not get 1 penny of it. Turkey gets this, will get to United Nations organizations that go directly to cities. Nothing goes to the Turkish budget in that. Directly to the refugees, where the Turkish cities in the south of Turkey give home to 3 million people. This is a direct help to that, not to the budget of Turkey.
Yeah, but it's a bargaining deal for
that is, I think,
Erdogan.
a humanitarian intelligent solution. No, Erdogan, I have talked to him myself on that time as it was started. Erdogan is not very happy about it, that he has no possibility to have any control of this money. That, I think, is important. But on the other side, it's helpful there because the Turks have taken 3 million refugees, which is much more than we altogether have taken.
Of course.
In the European Union. And therefore, we have to keep this deal in that way. And we have to see that it's not just the asylum seekers which should be back. The registered people should be sent back with their CFR bonds. That means that if, because of their geographical situation, Greece and Italy register, as we have asked them to do so, then they have these migrants always in their house, and if we do not distribute it in a proper way. And therefore, we have to make this deal not against Greece, not against Italy, but with these two countries. Otherwise, they will be the victim of the whole story. They are not the countries which take all the migrants for us. And this is the position of Mrs. Merkel, to come to here to a joint conclusion, not to punish some countries who have the bad luck to live at the Mediterranean.
And it's not just Angela Merkel who's talking about sharing the burden on this. On Monday, the Italian Prime Minister in Berlin, after patching up in Paris last Friday with Emmanuel Macron, neither Italy nor France wanted to take in the 630 migrants that were stranded aboard the Aquarius, that rescue ship which eventually dropped anchor Sunday morning in the port of Valencia. Spain's new government coming to the rescue in this one instance, with socialist leader Pedro Sanchez raising the bar for that summit next week in Brussels.
What the Spanish government has to do is call on the solidarity of the European Union. This policy can only be resolved from an EU perspective, with a common migration policy, with a common border policy, and Frontex is there for that, and also with a common integration policy and refuge and asylum policy.
Leopold Tragot, if Sanchez is hoping for an EU-wide agreement, is he bound to be disappointed next week?
Well, if he hopes to find a new great bargain at the European level, then he will certainly be disappointed, because there will be no quick success on EU-wide migration policy reform. Yet it is still possible that we will find some bilateral agreements or some certain steps forward, some deals with third countries that might help to reduce the influx, but I don't think there will be any major change, really.
It all started, of course, last week. Horst Seehofer, the Interior Minister, talking of an alliance.
All the solutions we've done.
Sorry, Elmar Brok?
Yes? I didn't hear you.
Well,
oh, it was Roland Tichy. I'm sorry. Roland Tichy, go ahead, jump in.
May I take the answer? I think the program for North Africa is a good one, but Angela Merkel's time is running out. Germany took between 1.5 and 1.8 million migrants during the last 3 years, and the pressure is high. And during the last few days, her party, the CDU, was losing 4 points, losing 4 points in the polls. So time is running out, and something has to be done. And this, the question is, why has it not been done during the last 3 years? Why has nothing happened? We are discussing now. People ask, so I think. Waiting for EU agreement on a resettlement program is done since of 3 years, but there is no resettlement program which is working.
Can I say something?
Yes, Elmar Brock, go ahead.
Rubbish.
Sure.
3 years is nothing done. We, the European policy, especially also because of the support of Mrs. Merkel, have achieved in the last 3 years that we have now per month 95% less migrants from the Middle East and Africa than we had in October 2015. To say nothing has happened is just wrong.
We just paid the Turks to close the border, that's why.
Directives for the...
Well, Mr. Brock,
that was the deal.
That Germany...
Hang on, one at a time. Elmar Brock first. Elmar Brock first.
That is the European agreement. That is the European agreement, and we do... And can I finish my sentence, sir? If you continue to tell wrong stories, give me a chance to correct that. This was done with Turkey, Lebanon, and Jordan. We are on a way to do it with Libya, where we have a lot of success, especially our Italian friends were also successful there. And also more and more our French friends, but altogether European agreements. What we do in Niger and Mali is to stop the people before they go to the Sahara. This is all European policies. From the 7 reform directives, which are on the table, 6 are negotiated ready. Just the distribution thing, not what is in overall the minor thing, but not psychologically. And here we have to see that we have to follow this line, because only European-wide, Europeans together, we can keep this under control. And I must say, in the preparation of the Bavarian elections, we should not destroy this common approach of the Europeans. And one last sentence. In some Central and Eastern European countries where you had for 50 years communist dictatorships, there was told them only all foreigners are bad people, and we need more, 1 or 2 decades more until these countries have got a feeling for such events, and therefore we have to do another type of burden sharing than the distribution of people.
Well, it is good words, was what Elmar Brock tells us, but as a matter of fact, I think not that Germany could stand another 100,000 or 200,000 migrants per year, as the numbers just this June shows. From January to June, were coming more than 100,000 migrants to Germany, and people are fed up. They want to have to be done something, and they want to have to be done something in detail, not only in general and not only in Libya, but in Germany. So they want to have a real integration program. They want to have a real program which does not allow asylum seekers to move over Europe to get in a country where the benefits of social welfare are the highest for them. This is the question. Why do we allow asylum seekers to check the ways and to
therefore
check
we have closed the
agreement talking, okay? Now let me end my sentence. I did before with you. So, and this is the reason why the coalition of Angela Merkel is underway to break. As a matter of fact, the CSU talks about the ultimative solution within 2 weeks, and I do not see any solution within 2 weeks.
Before I turn to Elmar Brock and to Alexis Poulain and Leopold Tragot, let's just remind our viewers here. It all started last week. Horst Seehofer talking of an alliance with Italy and Austria in the company of the visiting Austrian Chancellor, Sebastian Kurz, who, by the way, his country takes over the rotating presidency of the EU next month. Kurz, who talked of an axis of the willing when it comes to border policy. This Monday, Seehofer, again, putting the heat on Merkel with that 2-week deadline for early July.
Nobody is seeking the end of the coalition, the breaking up of the parliamentary alliance, or the failure of the government. At least, nobody that I know. This is not about 14 days. This is about a fundamental disagreement, namely that we want a national solution if a European solution does not materialize. And the CDU, or at least its leadership, does not want that national solution. That is our major difference.
Now, there have been plenty of reactions from other regional leaders. The CDU Prime Minister of Hesse calling out Seehofer for publicly challenging Merkel.
If I have 63 topics and we agree on 62 topics and they're great, then last week our time would have been best used promoting those 62 points and negotiating the 1 point rather than arguing about just the 1 point.
So, Elmar Brok, is Angela Merkel in trouble?
For sure she has a problem, because she has a problem by purpose from her Minister of Interior, who's the party chairman of another party. But she will manage it. I took part in the party board meeting on Monday. There was a very broad support. She will deliver, as she has always delivered. We will have progress. We have now 25% less migrants coming to Germany than 3 years ago. And we will have conclude also the reform of the Dublin directive in order to have even more instruments available, as we have done national instruments have used. The question where how to bring families together, this legislation was done 10 days ago. So there is step-by-step progress with less migrants, but always under the circumstances to do it together with our European neighbors, not do it alone, and have not as a situation which is against other European countries. If you talk about these registered people, it would mean that all registered people then have to stay in Italy, in Greece. These two countries have then to take the burdens alone. And I think that is, despite the old Dublin Agreement, not a fair situation in this moment, and this should be seen. And she tries to solve that problem with our neighbors and not against them.
Leopold Tragot, why is this public row between Angela Merkel and her interior minister, who, as Elmar Brok says, hails from another party, the CSU, why is it coming to a head now?
Well, there are two sides to this. On the one hand, many people say that this is only due to the upcoming elections. The CSU, so Seehofer's party, faces in their home state of Bavaria in October this year. And they're pretty much afraid that the anti-immigration AfD is eating into their voter base. So what they want to do now is try to strengthen their own profile on immigration by attacking Merkel for being too liberal on this. Yet at the same time, this is something we've already seen since 2015, that the CSU and Merkel's CDU have increasingly been diverging in their approach to how to handle migration, with Merkel increasingly continuously supporting a more liberal, a more multilateral approach, and the CSU actually being willing to just go ahead nationally, unilaterally, and clamp down on immigration. So on the one hand, this is a longer issue, but which is now coming to a helm due to the upcoming elections in Bavaria.
With a party that makes up only 6% of the German parliament, how much bargaining does the Bavarian CSU party have? More than you think, if you believe a poll that was published for the newspaper Bild over the weekend. And there you see that if an election were held tomorrow, the CSU would garner 18%. That's second most. Now, of course, the numbers here are tight. It's all within the margin of error, but it would be ahead of the Social Democrats. Roland Tichy, is Seehofer bluffing by going public with this row? Is he willing to go all the way and risk the CSU having slates of candidates that challenge the CDU down the line?
Well, it is a long discussion in Germany. Should the CSU go nationwide? She will not. The CSU will stay in Bavaria, I'm sure for that, and the CDU will stay in the rest of Germany. But the CSU brings a lot of electorate to the combined union of CSU and CDU. And if the German, or if the Bavarian party, the CSU, is losing majority, Angela Merkel, anyhow, is more and more weakened. As I said before, the time is running out for Angela Merkel, and the electorate wants to have real measures on borders. And it came up during the last 2 or 3 days in what a bad misshape the German government of the interior in fact works. If you ever heard something about German efficiency or of laws and so on, forget about that. It's just the ruins of inefficiency and of incompetence. And this, what has been shown now by Mr. Seehofer, makes the people furious about a government which always complains and proposes but doesn't manage what's going on in this country.
But public opinion seems to back Merkel over Seehofer if you look at the national level.
Well, I do not believe in polls like that, because because it is not a reason that the CSU must go nationwide. She has the stronghold in Bavaria, and the CDU on the others regional election will lose anyhow votes. So it is not the question of CSU attacks directly the CDU. It is the question to which party are the voters going next time.
Yeah. And I think it raised the question of the CDU when Merkel stepped down.
Can I say something about?
Can it go on like that? And I think that's why CSU is getting more visible now, because the heritage of Merkel doesn't mean that CDU will be the leading party of the coalition in the future.
Elmar Brock?
First of all, if we would do a poll, then the CDU would get 20% in Bavaria. So I agree with Mr. Tichy, such polls are idiotic and that will solve the problems. And only together we are stronger. Nobody wants to stop the relationship between the Christian Social Union and the CDU. And we have to see that Mrs. Merkel has very often managed this. Mr. Tichy, also in the Euro debate, has already declared 10 years ago that Merkel is finished. They will be finished not yet. And therefore, I think we should see that she does step-by-step solutions which will help us. She will not be nervous. She will have, when you see the results of the discussion with Mr. Macron today, in many fields, it's an incredible progress which will pay off at the Council next week. And there will be further discussions, and I think she has already managed other situations. And we have to see that Mr. Seehofer, these tiny problems of the 63rd problem of an agreement where 62 is agreed, has never proposed in the coalition agreements in the negotiations. That is just a quarter of a year ago. At that time, it was not this problem. It was not even mentioned by him in the negotiations. And now it's the question of the end of the world. And I think the Bavarian elections have a problem. We hear opinion polls, they are under 40%, would be a disaster for the Christian Social Union. They would lose the overall majority, would be an identity question for them. And therefore, I think the best point that we get better results again is to reconcile and go forward with a joint policy and not have this trouble. The CSU, with this type of policy, had lost the last European elections. They had the weakest result of all, in the terms of losses, of all CDU state elections. And herefore, I think unity and come to conclusions is the most important point to win voters back.
Hey, while it was all coming to a head Monday between Merkel and Seehofer, the President of the United States was taking to Twitter. Donald Trump on Monday, saying the people of Germany are turning against their leadership as migration is rocking the already tenuous Berlin coalition. Crime in Germany is way up. That's factually incorrect if you believe national statistics there. Big mistake in allowing millions of people who've so strongly and violently changed their culture, exclamation point. Trump, by the way, reiterating this Tuesday with a new tweet, crime in Germany up 10% plus. Officials do not want to report these crimes, he writes in parentheses. Since migrants were accepted, other countries are even worse. Be smart, America. Roland Tichy, those aren't the official figures out of Germany.
The official figures say that Donald Trump is right, because the decreasing number of criminality is just because people do not apply to police if their bicycle is stolen any longer. All the stealing of less worth things, stealing in a shop or stealing in a supermarket, is not longer handed over to the police because police is so out of order that they cannot handle these small problems. The big things people are weird of, and the big things.
But hang on, it makes it sound like Germany is out of control, those tweets.
Raping women went up 40% within 2 years. I do not know because you are laughing, because people are afraid of this. Killing went up 10%. Attacks on life went up almost 10%.
But so can you link that? I mean, okay, that's the statistics. It all went up. Can you link that to the migrants? Can you link that to the fact that it's because you have the migrants?
You can link it to the migrants. The migrants are between 10 and 15.
Do you have like actually a racist view of crimes and saying who actually did the crime and where they come from? I mean, we're talking about Trump who's putting kids in cage back home. It's someone who uses this. It's a pure racist rhetoric saying that the stranger are wrong. The stranger it's just like Orban.
I do not know if statistic is racism. Statistic is figures, and the figures.
Well, that's why you can't link crime to migration. That's my point.
Statistics shows that migrants are 10 times higher in criminality than Germans. So this is a matter of fact. If you deny it, you close your eyes, you close your ears, but close your mouth too. Then statistic is true.
Elmar Brock.
Yeah, I think with Mr. Tichy, when I hear him talk about statistics, I always are reminded on Winston Churchill, only trust statistics you have falsified yourselves.
No, it's the official statistic. You
we have to see that Germany is a safe country.
One at a time. Elmar Brock.
Germany is a safe country. Stop it, Mr. Tichy. I do not think, Mr. Tichy, in which country do you live? And if I say the United States,
the statistics of your government.
Can I finish my sentence, sir? Can I
just do it?
Finish my sentence? Germany is a safe country. It has 25. They have less criminality than since 25 years. We have a situation when I look to the United States, how many murders have happened there, how difficult it is to go through certain quarters of cities, and then an American president tells us that Germany is in a disaster and falls in a criminal trap, then it's just not true. Mr. Trump does not know his own country, I have the impression, and therefore I think is the question, Mr. Tichy, everything what is bad against the German government, you invent in a proper way and a very good way. How you to explain it?
All right, very briefly, because we're short on time. Leopold Traugott, your thoughts on those transatlantic tweets?
Well, I think on the one hand, it is somehow helpful to Merkel in the sense that her politicians and journalists will come to her help because everyone likes to speak out against Donald Trump. But I actually don't think that the average German will care particularly much about what Donald Trump says about the German crisis, but they will care about actual policy solutions.
Alexis Poulain?
Yeah, it's a fact. I mean, Trump is just tweeting, but I mean, it's a guy who sees the world through Fox News. And remember, Paris was a no-go zone for Fox News, and we have the most terrorists in Europe, as he said, back from G7. So no matter what he's saying, he's just putting oil on fire. The problem is that he's a world leader and having this stance, which is a xenophobic stance, as I said, putting kids in cage at the Mexican borders. He's just helping people like Salvini having wings and coming into Europe with the same xenophobic speech and saying, oh, yes, we have one issue and it's migration. And it's not true.
All right, many more issues that unfortunately we don't have time to broach now, but we will in upcoming editions. I want to thank Alexis Poulain. I want to thank Elmar Brock for being with us from Brussels, Roland Tichy from Frankfurt, and Leopold Traugott in London. Stay with us. There's more to come here on France 24.